Welcome to ICRC COVID HR and Business Updates. My name is Pandy Pridemore, Principal Consultant and Founder for the Human Resource USA. Welcome back. We've got another great show for you today. We're really excited. I'll actually have another new presenter with us. You know, the last couple shows we've been talking about the most pertinent things going on, all the changes and the updates. But as you know, if you've been watching the show the last two episodes, I've been talking about that 5-month look back. What have we learned in the last 5 months? Well, today we have Dan Bates. Dan is Executive Director for the Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce here in the Cincinnati market. This is a community that has absolutely blossomed. They have gotten all their act together in terms of agencies and government people and businesses. And Dan's going to be talking about all this wonderful positive stuff that was taking place prior to COVID and all the things that his membership has experienced and the lessons that they've learned to now kind of reflect on, which should be some really, really good stories. So you'll be very interested in hearing some of that. Then we're going to move over to Tracy Rupert. Tracy's been on the show a couple times. You'll remember Tracy. In fact, Tracy was one of our biggest headliners for a while. As president of T6 Group and the executive director for the circuit here in Cincinnati, Tracy's going to take us back over all lessons learned in regards to IT. Remember, that was one of the first things that we had to set up when we realized we were going to have all these remote workers. And yet, did we learn any lessons on all the bumps and bruises that we collected? Because I don't know of any companies that did not learn from having to shove all their employees remotely in a short period of time. And then as a new guest for the show, Lee Geiger is coming. Lee Geiger from Graydon. As an employment labor law attorney, Lee is speaking to so many groups and is so well known down here in the Cincinnati market that I had to pull him in. I think he's doing it as a favor to a friend of mine. But Lee's going to walk us through, again, some of those bumps and bruises that we've learned from an HR perspective, and then the things that we need to be focusing on as we move forward. So again, get your pencils and papers ready, because I know that this show is going to, and the content's going to give you something you're going to want to apply and take back to your management teams. So let's just jump in. Dan, let's start with you. Hamilton, the city, the new discovery of Southern Ohio. Tell us about what's going on down there.
Well, thank you. You certainly gave us a great commercial here for me to speak. But, you know, prior to COVID-19, Hamilton was really really a force to be reckoned with, and coming out of some, difficult times over the past decade. But the past couple of years have been very, very strong for us. So, I would say the bold statement that it was almost like we could do no wrong there for a while. Everything we did clicked. And, one of the things that set us up for success also got us through COVID-19, and that is collaboration. The way things work in Hamilton, I say to a lot of people that if you look at Hamilton on paper, it doesn't always work. And I know people from other communities say, how are you guys making this stuff happen? It's because of, positivity that we will not allow ourselves to fail. So it's not like we sit around the campfire and sing Kumbaya and hold hands or anything like that, but we are all on the same page. And when you get all the leadership on the same page, whether it's the business community, nonprofit organizations, or the city leaders, you can do some really amazing things. So, we were on a wonderful forward momentum, and then COVID-19 hit. So, the first thing that you feel, I think, is stress and then fear. What's going to happen next? And I think everybody was going through that. So, I think the thing that we did right is, Tracy will appreciate this, but as a chamber, we were IT ready. I had been actually faulted over the past few months by some involved in my organization that we had focused too much on IT and actually had systems in place that were way beyond what we were ever going to need. And then guess what? When we had to go remote, we could do it by saying, okay, as of now, we're remote, go home. and we were ready. So we didn't have to struggle as a lot of companies did with how do we make this work. So we had all of our systems, all of our information, everything available to us from wherever we were on any mobile device. So, we have a system through Microsoft that I have access to everything in our office, regardless of who created it, on my cell phone. So that gave us, and that was to give me great mobility, never knowing we would need it for the entire staff at a moment's notice. So that helped us. What that allowed us to do is we never really shut down. I thought it was, obviously for the safety of my employees, and I do want to make a mention of this. I think what we looked at is what are the most valuable assets that we have. And number one, it was our employees as an organization. So how do we take care of our employees, not just, financially and protecting their jobs, but also giving them a sense of security, that even though we were all going down the path of uncertainty, that we would get through this. So, I was as scared as they were, but they never knew that until after the fact. So, we sent the staff home immediately. First thing I did was call local law enforcement and made sure that I was deemed an essential worker, so that we could keep the office open and really decide what we were to do next. So we did that, and we had to shift gears. And so with the staff, we said, what's the most important thing that we can do? We're a membership organization, and we really work with the business community, obviously with our members, but throughout the business community, whether they're members or not. So, our first thing was, what is our mission right now? Forget everything that was on the table, forget everything that was a priority. What becomes our number one priority? And that was getting our businesses through this. So all of our decisions, all of our priorities, if it didn't align with getting our businesses through this, then we took it off the table. So with that being said, everybody's job changed. We really had one of my staff who was all about posting everything on social media. We immediately formed a COVID-19 page. I became the seeker of information. So I got on every webinar, every website, every training, everything, you name it. I learned more about SBA loans than I ever wanted to know, and started saying, okay, what's important to our members? So I became kind of the gatherer of the information and then deciphering that to my staff to look at what would be the best channels to put that out. So communication became our number one priority, not just for our members, but for the entire business community. Getting back to collaboration, one of the things that was a great win for us and the businesses in Hamilton is my city manager reached out to me, and they wanted to help the businesses and wanted to know if we could help them, implement this plan. So the city gave us $300,000 as soon as the shutdown was about to occur. They met, they got it approved in an emergency meeting, and from the time that they decided to do this until we actually had the checks in our business's hands was 1 week. So the turnaround was phenomenal. We quickly formed a small committee that would review the applications, which again, coming back to technology, we used Google Docs to do that, so that as people filled in the application, we didn't have to wait till it was done. We could see it as it was filling in. And so by the time the last person applied, we could make those decisions pretty quickly. So the first thing we did after the staff went remote, and we were sure that we were fully operational, is with the city's support and really their funding, that $300,000 went out to some 65 plus businesses, and that was a huge safety net for a lot of people that were shut down with really no warning, and that also got people through till they could apply for PPP loans and things like that. So the other thing we did is when the payroll protection program was coming out, we really became a major conduit in that, working with all the banks. So we really paid attention to who was ready, who was behind, who was caught up. And, businesses were calling us to say, how do I get this payroll protection money? And we knew how. So we were literally using cell phones of bank representatives and really almost brokering our members and our non-members, to financial institutions and CPA firms that we knew could get their application in and get it processed and get their funding. So that's some of the tangible things we did. But I think what we really learned as an organization is when we're really good, when are we the best? And we found out that I'm not sure this is a good thing or not, but as a staff, we are the best when there's a crisis. We are really a great group that can pull together and just set the priorities on a moment's notice. And, it's almost like an emergency response team. So we didn't know we could do that, actually. But with everybody on the same page saying, we just have to save all of our businesses and save the economics of Hamilton, that became our whole priority. I think the other thing is being positive. Many of our members were frightened. We didn't let them know that we were too. We let them know that we understood where they were coming from, but we really took on a position of strength and guidance and being here. So, coming into the office every day when most everything else was closed, to me, I think it worked. To me, it was a symbol that we are here for you. The lights are on, and somebody's going to be here to answer the phone, whether you're looking for information, you just want to talk, you're scared, or whatever. And I think that became kind of a beacon for our members, that they knew no matter when they called, somebody would answer and they had somebody they could talk to. So kudos to my staff. They did a phenomenal job at working remotely. One of the best compliments we've ever received is one of our members who weeks later said, if you hadn't told me, I would have never known your staff wasn't in the office because they never missed a beat. So, kudos to them. So I think, when there's uncertainty, when you're surrounded by uncertainty, and you show that even though you're uncertain, but you show strength and guidance and reassure people that, we're going to come up with a way to help you get through this, and we're here for you no matter what happens, and we're not going anywhere. I think that really helped us, and a lot of people started flocking to us, and we actually gained membership during the shutdown and immediately after, which is not something we expected. We thought if people are looking at chamber memberships, that probably be the first thing to go. During budget cuts and things like that, but we actually found out that has not been the case. I would like to think that's because we were here for them through the entire thing. We had options. We knew who to connect them to, and we knew who to talk to. So I guess what we've learned is no matter what happens, you have to find out a way to do business. I'm the mental state that you never quit, you never cancel, you never shut down. You might have to shift gears, you might have to reschedule. That's the other thing too. We took cancel out of our vocabulary. When I saw all these other people, putting cancel on their calendars, I told my staff, if any of you do that, I would kill you. So we do not use that term. We will either reschedule or we will figure out a way. We did what a lot of people did. We started doing things virtually. And, even though we had a great IT system, we really were not adept at doing things virtually. Teams was something we used occasionally. We had never used Zoom, and I was actually kind of afraid of Zoom for the lack of security. But it is the most, one of the easier platforms to use, along with others. But, so we said, okay, how do we do networking, for instance, when we can't be face-to-face? So we decided to do an online happy hour and invited people to the table and invited people to bring their favorite beverage. And then we went around while we were networking. What are you drinking? You're drinking bourbon, you're drinking beer, you're drinking soda, and just kind of made it fun. Honestly, that didn't last very long. After we did that a couple times, nobody wanted it again. But we did come up with Coffee and Conversation, which was an opportunity for people to get on a Zoom and just talk about anything that was troubling them during these times. And that became very effective. We morphed that into, as we were looking at things coming, opening back up in the recovery, morphing that back into Ask the Experts. That has been extremely viable for us. We have continued that program. That program will never be anything but virtual. So that's something else we learned. Some things work live and some things work better virtually. Ask the Experts, just so you know, we do it every Tuesday at 9 o'clock. And we have had all kinds of subjects, from health safety to marketing out of the crisis to you name it.
I think one thing that can be said about you, Dan, and the team there at Greater Hamilton is that you guys got creative and you adapted.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing.
That's a great thing to be said about any chamber.
Okay. We found out that, like, Coffee and Conversation, it's a blend, and that was an experiment. We get people on Zoom, but we get 400 to 500 every week on Facebook Live. So that's been great for us.
Well, and I want to thank you for posting our show on your website. I just cannot thank you enough for that. Again, the show's gotten extremely good feedback. Normally people aren't sitting outside taping these kind of shows, and the lawn people and landscaping people come by, but that's the beauty of a show like this, is that it is real and authentic and real time and engaging, and has such great presenters like yourself. Now, Tracy, you had to have been really impressed with a lot of what he just said in regards to them implementing and working on the remote side. Because we had you on the show twice already, and you put a lot of emphasis on that.
Yeah, the good news, lots of organizations were fortunate, just like Dan was, to have planned ahead, not realizing just how much they were planning ahead, only to have it proven that it was a good thing, and now to be rewarded and acknowledged for all of the efforts that they made and having come out. So the good news is, Dan, you're not alone in your fear of Zoom and video conferencing. Even all of those of us in this world weren't very adept at it, and candidly still are not. The other good news is Zoom's taking care of a lot of those security concerns that people had. So I think it's one of the best platforms that are out there, particularly, like you said, for ease of use. There's no question. And a lot of organizations have done just what you've done, adopted Teams, particularly for internal meetings and events and collaboration, because the tools capability is right there. It integrates right with all of your documents, your ability to share and edit and view everything. And then they use Zoom for public events where they're bringing others in, fostering a larger audience, particularly one that's outside of their organization. So that's been a strategy that lots of folks have accomplished, for sure.
Yeah, and he mentioned a little bit about the security aspect. Can you take us a little bit further in that? Because your first presentation with us put a lot of emphasis on setting up those VPN market networks or whatever. What have we learned over the last 5 months in regards to that?
So we've kind of been through phases, like we do with lots of things that are out there. Our first phase was, oh my gosh, the world just shut down. We have to go work from home. How do we make that happen? So people like Dan figured out, I have Teams, I can leverage this differently. We have VPNs, we can dial in. Some people found themselves having to scramble to create a little bit more opportunity and pipe, if you will, to do that, but they got through it. Then, as you mentioned, Pandy, kind of phase two was, oh dear, everybody's at home now. What just happened to my security? Do I have it? Have they updated their routers? Have they figured it out? Do I have the right security on my end? Most organizations have now had the opportunity to go back and double check all of that and make sure that the right things that are there, because there's a lot of increased activity around ransomware, phishing emails, and all of those things. It is one of the things that the security folks are seeing a ton of. That volume has increased exponentially by tagging on to COVID. It's just an ideal time. Unfortunately, you're going to see a spike again with the hurricane. People tag on to any natural event and try to embed what they're doing into your heartstrings to get your information. So whenever we have those kinds of events, you have to be on the watch for the increase in the phishing types of emails that try to get into your system, capture your data, or lock you down in ransomware. But the good news is this next phase that I think we're all in now, everybody's kind of gone to that I'm talking to are saying, I'm so tired of talking about COVID. Please don't use the COVID word. Do we have to say pandemic? Do we have to say quarantine? We're ready to move on. And there's, although we're all still frustrated that we can't just go out to eat or shop like we used to, it has presented us with some opportunities, just like any crisis does. So where I hope most organizations are is we've gotten through the rush of work from home. We've established a new cadence on how to work with our employees. We've made sure the security is right. Now we can go, wow, I never thought we could have done X, Y. One of the biggest things is paper. People that were used to passing paper around have now figured out how to pass documents electronically, how to have signatures. They've escalated their plans to use tools like DocuSign and Adobe and so forth. So now organizations have the opportunity to leapfrog where they were. And hopefully in doing so, they can leapfrog not only from where they were to where they want to be, but they're leapfrogging their competition. Because you can look at where you're at and go, I can skip 3 steps. I can just go to this new technology. I realized I don't have to do these 5 steps I was doing because they're not needed anymore. They aren't serving any real purpose. And I think that's the biggest message that a lot of people are hopefully starting to see, if they hadn't already, is technology is really all about, if the technology is not providing your employees with the smooth interface and the ability to operate seamlessly so that they can provide an outstanding customer experience, then why do you have it? Are you implementing technology because you think you have to, or because someone else told you this was the best tool? That's not the reason to implement technology. So take where we've been and go, I never thought I could have done work from home. Now I know it works. Now I know my employees are productive. So let me take that same philosophy and figure out where else I can use it with the other IT tools that I have. Can I quit producing some reports? Am I finding that now that I'm work from home, people aren't even using some of the programs that you thought they were? They don't need them to get the job done anymore, or they only need one little tiny piece. So figure out how you can move forward. So, digital transformation is the buzzword these days. And depending on who you ask, it means 10 million things to 10 million people. But the basic concept is using technological tools to improve how your employees and your customers interface with your business. So again, it's all about the people. So Dell did a survey. They do one about every year of almost 5,000 different companies, and they track the results. And they group them into leaders, learners, and laggards. And what they've seen over the years, and the jump in the last 4 years in particular, with respect to digital transformation, is that leaders focus on the customer experience. They focus on their ability for their employees to perform and work remotely and fit in where they can contribute the most. And they leverage data better than the laggards do. Now, not one of those 3 things that I said are truly technologically oriented. It's not a specific technical solution. It's how they're using technology to deliver the results. So I think that we've made that jump from work from home. We've got the security. Now let's look at where we can take this to leapfrog and and really make a difference for our business. So some people are probably going, well, digital transformation, that's a big word. That means lots of complex things to lots of different people. I'm just a small company. I don't have a big IT staff. I may not have any IT staff. I may be using all third-party providers. That's okay. You're still using technology. And I'm sure Dan's seen this with a lot of his organizations and his members. You still ask the same questions. Why am I using this tech? What does it actually do for me?
Well, and Tracy, go off of that and help our smaller businesses understand where to get that data. I mean, you're talking about collecting reports or collecting data or metrics. How can a small employer do that? And what kind of information should they be looking for?
You know what? The honest answer to that is it's look inside, look at themselves, analyze what you're doing. One of the best ways to do that is to take a process and go backwards. So for example, let's say you're thinking you need to have a new customer relationship management tool so you can track sales more efficiently and do more things to get your sales, right? Well, look at your sales process and map it backwards. Take yourself from, I just got an order for a new client today. What information did I get from them? What do I need from them? Where did I get it? Who gave it to me? When did they give it to me? Where did that come from? And go all the way back to when you had that first meeting with that new customer to figure out what the process is and ask yourself, if I grew my business by 20%, would this process still work? Or would I bury my staff? Now, none of that's technology. That's just spaghetti drawings on a whiteboard somewhere with the team in the room. Now, I would strongly encourage organizations to have someone from the outside come in to help you do that, because when you're in the process, you're too close to it. You make assumptions about where you're going and why something is done, and you think you understand it. So you really need somebody outside to say, now tell me again, why do you do that? You send this person an email. What do you add to that? What did they give you that you didn't need any info from them? You were just waiting for it. And then you send it to somebody. Well, why are they waiting for? Well, wait a minute. Why couldn't I send one email to 3 people and I just took 3 days out of the process? That isn't a technology's problem. That's a process flow problem. So that's why I say, even if you don't have IT in-house, you can benefit from this concept of how do I deliver seamlessly so my employees can work efficiently to deliver that customer experience, and then go look at the tools and say, how do I now leverage the tool to fit that? So many people like to think, oh, I heard of ABC technology solution and it's the best one that's out there, so I'm going to go implement that. And they go get it, and then they start to implement it, but they didn't think about that process. And so now they're trying to force feed their business into that process the way it's been defined, rather than looking at, here are the things I really need to stand out and to be competitive and an industry leader in what I do in my market. Now, which tool can most closely fit that? So it really needs to be a backward conversation than what I see usually happens today. Did I answer your question?
Yes, and I also want to add to that normally that involves thousands of dollars that maybe the company wasn't prepared to pay. So the return on investment is even slower. So the problem just gets complicated even worse.
Well, I would argue that it will feel like that, but what will happen is you invest that in the front end, and it makes your implementation shorter and tighter, and your results are more expected. Because what you hear of a lot in IT was, I implemented this, it's now taking forever. I thought I'd be done here, but I these 15 new things. So now my implementation takes this long, and I find out I can only get 50% of the way. So it feels like it's going to cost more. Mm-hmm. Over time, it doesn't. And in some cases, there have been organizations that literally can make changes the very next day before they even buy the technology. The situation I just described about the process flow in an email, that's a true client story. When we mapped their sales process backwards, we identified that there was an email change we could change. They implemented it the next day and took 3 days out of bringing a new client on board. That's real.
So take us back to all the training, because again, on one of your previous shows, you talked about a list of training that everyone should be making sure their employees have experienced at the beginning of COVID. And now that we're halfway, listen to me say halfway, I'm optimistic. We're 5 months into COVID.
Yeah.
You know, I would certainly think that cybersecurity would still be one of those training topics that could be
So you're absolutely right. COVID, no COVID, cybersecurity training is an ongoing process. Most of the organizations that are really on top of it are doing that type of training monthly. They'll have an example that goes out. They'll have a little blog. They'll have some type of a blurb on a newsletter. We forget COVID. You should be doing that monthly. You know, watch out for the links. And just as a constant reminder, worst case should really be quarterly. Lots of organizations do that type of training, and it's mandated in an official training program, and it's only once a year. The challenge with that is it's just too easy to get duped. And ironically, the ones who fail the training the most is the executive suite. They're the ones that click on the phishing emails almost every single time. So yeah, the training is ongoing. It's not COVID. From a security perspective, you want to constantly be on top of that. There are some great programs out there that offer little tidbits for you. They're not horribly expensive, and they're pretty easy to incorporate. Doing.
So what advice are you giving your clients as again, we're looking towards December 31st and not knowing whether that's going to be a firm date end for the pandemic? What things are you kind of prepping your clients to be prepared for over the next 4 months?
Work from home is going to stay, especially for technology people. Be prepared to take advantage of and fend off the fact that now employees can recruit anywhere. So where we had a problem with IT talent availability, period, across the country, everywhere, we're going to continue to see that because there's just so many new jobs in that field. Most people can't keep up. But now that organizations are recognizing I don't have to have them in an office, they're going to start to look other places. So we're going to have people trying to come take our good people, but by the same token, we can start to look at ways to go find extra people to augment our staff that we may not have been able to find before, which means you want to take, all the HR things, take really good care of your good employees now. Offer them that work from home. Make sure you're staying in touch. Make sure you understand, is this an introvert who loves this, or is this an extrovert who really wants to come back into the office? So really figure that out. The security thing is always there. Always, always, always be watching for that. But really stop and look at the tools and tricks you have in your bag today to figure out what you can analyze and really help launch a competitive differentiator for your organization as IT. Because the true IT leaders are recognized as revenue producing organizations and innovation partners. And so that innovation and revenue producing doesn't have to be, it can be your third-party IT provider that helps you do that. So, but really be looking at what can I get rid of throughout this and what can I jumpstart?
Good advice. Very, very good advice. Thank you, Tracy.
Sure.
That's why I have you back.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
We always have something that we need to think about. But now we're going to go to Lee Geiger, who's a new presenter on the show. Lee, I'm going to drag you through the mud of FFCRA. Do you mind joining me?
Oh, mercy. So I laugh when Tracy talked about non-COVID stuff. So I've probably done at least 15, maybe 20 webinars since March. And I hadn't really done more than 1 or 2 prior to that. They've all been COVID except one. I did one last week and it was not a COVID topic. And let me just tell you how exciting it was to not talk COVID. So yeah, Pandy, go ahead. Hit me with questions. I can talk about, what I'm seeing, what the crystal ball says and whatever you want.
Well, I think the hottest topic right now is the school kids.
It is.
The children going back to school and whether parents let them do in person or virtual. And I thought it'd be really nice if you reviewed the new Q&A that was just presented out on FFCRA in regards to school age children.
Yep.
Let's give them, our viewers, some insight on those 3 bullets.
Yeah. So the Department of Labor started a practice in April of releasing news on the weekend. They would release everything on Friday night, Saturday, and I think it was really a ploy to make employment lawyers have to work the entire weekend long. You know, I joke with people that I used to be an employment lawyer and now I'm a COVID lawyer. It's bizarre to think that 6 months ago we had never heard of the FFCRA. We had never heard of really COVID. I mean, COVID was something that was happening in China. And then all of a sudden, well, Italy's infected, but we're better than them. And then here we are, right? So,
Right.
So the Department of Labor gave us a gift on Friday, and that was they answered some questions about how to interpret the back to school provisions of the FFCRA and the paid sick leave and emergency FMLA. Every employment lawyer across the country held their breath on Friday night when they found that out, because we've all been giving advice based on what we think will happen. And that's what we've been telling clients. This is all a guess. I mean, this is all we're taking reasonable assumptions. We're reading the guidance that's out there, but there are no cases. We can't look back and say, well, 3 years ago, this is how this court ruled. And we can talk about this court in New York that's creating a stir as well. But basically, the Department of Labor came out on Friday and said that if your child is home from school because because school is closed, right? You don't have an option. The school is entirely closed. Then, of course, you're entitled to the paid sick leave and the emergency FMLA. If your child has a hybrid situation where school, like for example, one of our children, our daughter, is in school Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and she's home on Wednesdays. Now that daughter is 16, so she can more than take care of herself. And the last thing she wants is mom and dad intruding on her Wednesday home studying. But let's say that instead of 16, she was 6. So I could take that time off. The Department of Labor says, yes, that is protected under the FFCRA, the paid sick leave, the emergency FMLA. And you do need to get documentation, though, from the school, or at least from the employee, that proves that the school is in fact closed. The last one, and I get this question a lot, is parents are fearful that they don't want to send their kid to school because they're afraid that the kid will get COVID. And so the school offers 2 options. Option number 1 is they're in school. And option number 2 is that they can do remote learning. In some districts, it's for a semester, and some it's for the year. But in that scenario, Department of Labor is clear. Those people are not entitled to the paid sick leave because they had an option, and the school and daycare provider is not closed in that scenario. So,
Right.
And I'm seeing the back to school stuff. We had a lot of those questions early in August. We had a lot of those questions mid-August. This week, knock on wood, not too many questions, because I think most schools are back. Now, what's going to be interesting is what's going to happen as the schools start to have COVID outbreaks, right? So you could have a situation where a school declares on Wednesday, hey, guess what? We're not having school on Thursday. And businesses are just going to have to roll with that. They're going to have to deal with it. And the FFCRA, remember, applies to businesses that are 500 or fewer employees. But big businesses have to deal with this issue too. You know, everybody's in the same boat. It's just a matter of whether employees are getting paid for that time off.
Oh, and remind them too, let's just remind you, look, if your employee has already exhausted the PLS portion, they don't get another 80 hours. You exhaust that one time per employer. I had a question about that the other day. Well, do I have the right during the interview to ask the candidate if they've exhausted their PLS?
You
Other
do.
employer? I mean,
Yeah, you do. That's what's
I-
wild about it. I don't know how you prove it.
Exactly.
But you do have the right to find, I don't think I'd ask it in an interview.
Yeah.
But you do have the right to say, you know, if someone wants the paid sick leave, you do have the right to determine, okay, did you get it at your previous employer? Because you only get it once per employee.
But I would wait, personally, I'm telling my clients, wait till they ask for it, because
Agreed.
you're going to get into a medical conversation during an interview. So I would hands off there.
Agreed.
And then with the FLSA portion, or excuse me, not FLSA, the family medical leave portion, that again, it can be taken intermittent, just as you said, Lee. So that's extremely important for them to understand that this can drag out the
Well,
equivalent.
and you hit on a good point on the intermittent part, because right now there is some dispute over the intermittent leave. So the Department of Labor's guidance that came out in April said that intermittent leave is something that has to be mutually agreed upon. So in other words, the employer has veto rights. If an employee comes in and says, I want intermittent leave, the employer could say, no, we're just not going to do that. But the decision that came out of court in New York last month really threw that into some chaos, because that judge said that intermittent leave under the emergency FMLA needs to be interpreted the same as intermittent leave under regular FMLA, in which case the power is with the employee to request the intermittent leave, not with the employer. Now, that New York decision is not binding on probably most of the people that are watching this broadcast, unless you happen to be in Southern District of New York. But it is instructive on how other courts might interpret the intermittent leave provisions. And so we've got clients right now saying, well, what do I do? And the answer is, well, how conservative do you want to be? How aggressive do you want to be? If you want to be really conservative, then you're going to follow the guidance from New York. But if it's really going to put a pinch on your business, you're going to deny the intermittent leave if you have to.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think the biggest message is stay tuned. This thing has changed like the wind from day one. And Lee, you just remind our viewers that it is changing as of Friday. So again, that's why we have this show, is to keep the viewer updated on everything. Is there anything else you want to mention in regards to that New York decision? Because again, when you and I spoke on the phone, everybody was kind of pulled back, because some of those points were they were well taken.
Yeah, especially intermittent leave was the one that was very well taken. Mm-hmm. The definition of healthcare provider was restricted significantly by that court. And the court also talked about some notice periods and whether folks on furlough could take advantage of the paid sick leave. But really the biggest thing out of New York that's going to affect most people was the intermittent leave. Now, in terms of what to look for going forward, and then just kind of some general advice I've been giving clients. I think that if you want to be on the front end of things, start figuring out what your vaccine policy is going to look like, right? We are months and months and months away from having a vaccine that is readily available to employees, to the general public. But employers are going to have to decide, are we going to require that our employees get vaccinated or not? Mm-hmm. And there are good reasons on all sides of that. And so, it's coming. It's coming down the pike. So let's not wait until January, February, March to decide whether or not we're going to implement that type of a policy. Start thinking about that stuff now.
Great advice.
So the last bit of advice, and I'll let you hit me with some more questions, is everybody that's watching this show is a smart person, right? Everybody has been running a business, or they're in HR or something. I mean, we've all been through training. We all are good HR practitioners. Okay. Don't forget that. And don't forget your common sense. I've had some clients that have called and other people that I'm talking to, and it's like, well, wait a minute, you would never have disclosed somebody's name before. So you're not going to do it now about COVID. And don't forget the ADA still exists and the FMLA still exists. And you need to do that analysis. I've probably done more ADA analysis and FMLA analysis in the last 6 months than in the last 6 years. And don't forget, you still can't discriminate against people. And when you're doing layoffs, you still need to do the adverse impact analysis. I mean, all of these things, hoops, you still have to jump through. So don't lose your head just because COVID's out there.
Well, and I'm going to caveat off of that with you, Lee. We have said over and over again on this show that if you have employees in other states outside of Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky, which is our market here, you have to be aware of those state laws, and you have to be aware of the guidance that those particular, maybe even a municipality, it doesn't have to be the entire state. Just to give an example, the weekend must have been a good timing for everybody. Governor Whitmer up in Michigan has put through some guidance in regards to the symptoms of an employee and allowing individuals who may show symptoms of COVID but are identified with other ailments such as migraines or allergies to be able to return to work with a negative test, even though they're showing symptoms that show under COVID. This is big, guys. You, as viewers, you need to understand that the states are trying to get people back to work. They're trying to keep our businesses going and keep our economy moving. So they're going to start looking at some of these kind of things, and they're going to start putting as many measures as they can in place so that we can function as a country. If you have employees in Michigan, please look up that guidance. It's 2020 I believe 172. It's replacing 166, but it's most recent. It's called Protecting Remote Workers. It's a longer title, but you talk to your labor law attorney about that, or get with your HR consultant and review that guidance. Of course, it's going to give the protections of discrimination and disparaging and retaliation, which we've talked about on the show a number of times. Because again, to Lee's point, you got to be careful how you make decisions despite your intent of compassion and wanting to protect your employees. We still have these other laws that are in place. So I'm going to kind of move you now to another topic, which we've kind of touched on, but we haven't talked much about, and that's these waivers. These waivers that companies are starting to put in place to have both customers, vendors, employees sign saying, hey, you know, you're in our space, but we want you to release us of any liability if you happen to get COVID.
Please don't sue me. Right.
And they're legal documents. I mean, if you're having someone sign this, your intent is, again, don't sue me. That's a legal action. This is not something you pull off the internet.
No, well, it's a few things. One, you definitely don't pull it off the internet. Number two, I'm not sure that these are worth the paper they're written on. In some cases, they might be. If you're talking about customers that are coming into your place of business, then perhaps, although that's hardly the type of welcome mat that you want on your door. You know, please come in, but I'm not promising you that it's safe. And for vendors, kind of, you know, maybe you have them sign something. For employees, though, we've not been recommending that businesses have employees sign a waiver for a few reasons. One, a prospective waiver is probably not going to be enforceable. But two, even if it was, think about this. You're an employee and you're nervous about coming to work because COVID numbers are up across the country. And your business is telling you, you need to get back to work. And you're saying, I don't feel safe. And your business says, okay, well, here are all the great things that we've done for you. You know, we've got a cleaning service and we've got masks and we've got plastic barriers and we've got all of this great stuff. And it is safe. So come on back. But by the way, please sign this waiver because we're not actually promising you that it's safe. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And under the OSHA laws, you have an obligation to provide a safe workplace. Just like if this was a saw, you have an obligation to provide a safe saw to a carpenter, right? You're not going to ask the carpenter to sign a waiver that says, hey, this saw is safe, but I'm not going to promise you it's safe. So I want you to sign this waiver that says, if you cut your arm off, it's not my fault. Right? I mean, so think about it from a logical standpoint. That's why when I said before about not losing your mind when it comes to other HR laws and being practical, that's a perfect example.
Pandy, if I could just chime in here on something, you
Please
know,
do, jump in.
a lot of people are talking about, you know, getting back to normal. We're not going back to normal. We've learned too much, and you know, Lee had just said, you know, yes, there's smart people. We have a lot of smart business owners, but people get in a particular business because that's usually their area of expertise. Please reach out to professionals. If you need, and if you're trying to make an IT decision, get to an IT expert. You know, unless you're in that business, I'm sure you're not an expert. If you need to navigate with your employees and your you know, guidelines and you know, get to legal counsel. You know, I see too many business owners that do some research and make a decision. And, you know, and this isn't a commercial for Graydon, but, you know, the first person I call with any employee decision is Graydon. You know, and generally, you know, they say what you're trying to do is okay, but you might want to think of, you know, because they're the experts. I see so many businesses that get themselves into trouble because they think they're smarter and they think that they can save money by not hiring a professional, and they always end up in trouble or doing something they shouldn't have done, or like Tracy was referring to, buying a system or software program or something that was not the right fit. So, you know, from a chamber perspective, because we deal with so many businesses, you know what you know, and be an expert in your field and be stellar at it. But when you need advice where you're not an expert, get professional help. You know, this is a time of, you know, great opportunity. And I know Tracy mentioned that you know, this is a time of great opportunity and recreation. So even more, you need the advice of experts because we're all in uncharted territory.
The running line that I use, Dan, all the time is that our best clients call us before they get into trouble, and our best paying clients call us after.
Yeah, that's Lee, you've heard it a million times. It's never a problem until it's a problem.
Yep.
And I mean, again, I've been doing HR for 40 years. It's a situation where I look at individuals and I say, well, when was the last time you went to a course, or when was the last time you know, how did you get educated in what you do? And they look at me and go, oh, well, I've just always done it. That doesn't work anymore. It does not work anymore. So Dan, we're really on the show. We put a lot of emphasis. If you need an IT person, you get an IT person. Surround yourself with a good CPA. We've all learned that bankers are far more important than they have ever been. Employee benefits, which is one of the things I wanted to remind the viewers on as well. If you have not sat down with your 401k broker and discussed the 2020 changes in regards to your initial notifications, you need to do that. Next quarterly payments were due October 15th. Get with your broker and go over those. I'm not a guru in that. I don't think Lee's going to want to tell you anything about 401k and ERISA. So we're going to send you right back over to that group. I also want to remind everybody to notice that the suspension for accepting I-9 documentation in our traditional fashion has been extended to September 19th. Again, due to the pandemic, read those guidelines. If you don't have them, please contact Lee or I, and we'll be more than happy to provide those for you. But until September 19th, you are permitted to accept documents in any fashion that you can, because with remote workers, small and big, large caveat there. And one of the other things we emphasize a lot on, and Lee and Dan and Tracy, you all three touched on it here, is viewers, remember, things are changing so fast that the materials you may have, that 52-page toolkit that was printed out back in April, the OSHA update date that came out in May, that was 17 pages. Guys, that has all been updated. And the CDC here just in the last 4 weeks has updated twice. So their guidelines on isolation and quarantine and their symptom strategy-based approach to returning people to work. Look, this stuff is changing so fast. So go through your materials here this week. And if it's more than 4 weeks old, I would be
Yeah.
Verifying that, again, call your labor law attorney, call your consultant, but verify that what you're using is gospel. And this goes back to your policies too. I was talking to a client the other day that had an actual protocol. They're an ISO, so they want everything step by step by step, and they had it so etched in stone, and they were requiring 2 negative tests to come back in. Well, the CDC does not require 2 negative tests to return to work, but they swore them down that back in March. Well, maybe back in March, and I'm sorry, so much has happened. I'm not going to keep up with that. I'm keeping up with the new stuff. So watch when you've got it etched in stone and written in paper that it's the correct protocol and the correct policy. This is, guys, I try to give a training tip every week, and today's training tip, I'm going to split. I'm going to go with you, Tracy. You get the training tip. Viewers, your training challenge for this week is to get back in front of your employees and your staff and go over that cybersecurity material. Take Tracy's advice. If you can put something out there, even if you put it on the text stub, just something to prompt them and get them aware that they have to be cautious. In-person classes are great, we love them, but get in front of them and keep them aware of the cybersecurity risks that your company could be under. And then I'm going to go back to Lee, because we have said over and over again on this show, remember ADA, FMLA, FLSA, and the NLRB favorite, they're still there. And they're still hovering over us. And by the way, they're making changes as well. And if you're making HR decisions and you are not properly trained, and I mean professionally, formally trained, then you need to get a hold of your employment law attorney or get a hold of a consultant. And we will be more than happy to help you with that. But don't wait till something happens. Dan Bates from the Greater Hamilton Chamber of Commerce, Lee Geiger from Graydon, and Tracy Bruberg. What a great team. Thank you so very, very much. And thank you to ICRC-TV for one more hour. We hope to all see you next week. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.